I'm actually really easy to impress. Like, if you were to say, oh, I don't know, gave me the opportunity to kickflip a train, then you've already got my attention. Denshattack is what you get when you take Tony Hawk games, but instead of playing as a skater, you're a train, which is actually how the developers of the game, Undercoders, pitched the title. Now, of course, calling it Tony Hawk but train is just a simple way of describing it, and it's not the only inspiration this game has. One that's probably screaming at you right now is Jet Set Radio, what with the cel-shaded art style, streetpunk aesthetics, and even a soundtrack that tickles that part of your brain that's been personally picked at by Hideki Naganuma himself. It even has some similarities and tropes that Jet Set has in its story, but like, if you decide to squint a little. For example, it also takes place in Japan, has rival gangs, and an antagonistic corporation, though the story itself isn't that substantial and mostly just acts as a catalyst to get you through the game. Denshattack has been one of my more heavily anticipated games of the year ever since I played the demo during this year's Steam Next Fest, and from that demo alone you could tell what it wanted to be and what it wanted to do. It was fast, exciting, outlandish, and it left me wanting more, and now that we have the full release of the game, I could say that it has been an amazing ride from start to finish. So let's talk about it. The story of Denshattack takes place in Japan, where after the events of a climate catastrophe, people who could afford it began living in domed cities across the country to protect themselves from the outside climate. These cities themselves are run by a monopolistic corporation named Miraido, who really want to keep people in these domed cities. There are, of course, people who do live outside of the domed cities just perfectly fine. Turns out, when you remove people who negatively affect the environment, nature starts to heal. Radical idea. Anyway, you play as Emmy, who starts off as a ramen delivery driver, and after one delivery route, she meets Fernando, who introduces her to the world of Denshattack. You see, Densha means train, and attack means attack, and in this world, people drive trains at high speeds and perform tricks with said trains. As you make your way across Japan, you'll go against rival gangs and colorful characters such as the Gyaru gang, or a gang of delinquents, or the Yakuza, or this rockabilly gang that introduces you to these two characters who, okay, I'm not the only one, right? You see it too, yeah? I got enough pattern recognition to know what's going on here. The story doesn't take itself too seriously. Emmy has this main character energy about her where she's amazing at everything, challenges everything head on, befriends everyone she meets, and it's very unserious like 99% of the time. Personally, I love it, and it matches the campy feel of the game. Throughout the game, you'll be going through various different levels, and most of them will be a run from the beginning to the end, but there is some variety. For example, sometimes you'll be asked to race against other Denshattackers, or you might be given a skate park style level where the goal is to score as high as you can. At the end of each chapter, there's also a boss fight, and these have been really fun to go against, and they add to the over-the-top feel of the game. Like how the first boss fight is against this giant mecha that's been made from multiple trains, and it ends with you riding the mecha's rocket fist as you chase it down for the final punch. Or how one fight is against this castle that's been turned into a moving fortress, and you have to make your way inside it to break it down. There's even one fight that's just a rhythm game against another train, and that has been a really fun experience to go through. Every boss fight in this game has just been a sharp left turn, but that turn takes you down some of the most scenic paths I've ever seen. There is one more style of level that I haven't mentioned yet, and it might be my personal favorite, and it's one where you have this large area to navigate and you have to go across various tracks as you try to complete multiple objectives. Something I've enjoyed from the types of games that Denshattack is inspired by is the exploration aspect, where I can go and find new areas to chain various tricks, and this is the closest to that we have in Denshattack. Given that trains go on train tracks, until they don't in this game, you'll be going along set paths laid out to you without too much deviation, but these types of levels somehow manage to give you that feeling of free exploration, mostly due to the fact that you can complete these objectives in any order as you follow these color-coded signs, but also because you're able to loop around to try and find more places to land more tricks. Speaking of which, alongside completing levels, you'll also have a few other challenges to complete for medals. One of these is getting a high score, and you'll find yourself getting a gold medal on this most of the time, since the game does incentivize you to chain tricks and land into manuals to keep a long combo going. On some levels, performing a trick and landing into a manual will build up a meter that, when filled, will trigger a mechanic called the Yao Yorozudo, or the 8 million roads, which are these rainbow tracks and obstacles that lead you to hidden areas, and some levels will require you to trigger this to move on. There are other medal challenges you'll be able to complete, such as finishing at a faster time, or completing side objectives such as not crashing, or chaining tricks in a grind, or collecting a few objects that are laying around the map. Some of these, especially in the later levels, have been a bit difficult to complete, and I did find myself restarting a few times because I either crashed or I didn't score high enough, but thankfully the game is also really forgiving since it will always count your highest rank. So for example, if you manage to get a gold medal for your high score but a silver in your complete time, you could replay that level to try and finish faster without worrying about your score, so that's kinda neat. Something that does help with making these challenges easier is the large number of trains you're able to purchase in-game, each one with their own strengths and downsides. The first train you unlock gives you a faster trick speed but a shorter manual duration. There's also some that will make it impossible to derail from a grind, but in return you won't get as many points from grinding, or one that makes more difficult flip tricks score higher at the cost of more simpler tricks scoring less. The one you'll see me use more often in this video is one that adds an extra combo for every 5 times multiplier, but each time I crash, my score goes down. I have swapped between a few of these to help with finishing some of the medal challenges, like if I wanted to focus on getting a higher score but I worry about crashing a bit more often, I could swap to a train that makes it easier to build larger combos faster. Or if I struggled with getting that no crash run done, I could swap to a train that gives me a 3 crash buffer. As you go through the game, you'll unlock more and more tricks and mechanics, and you'll end up finding trains that take advantage of those newly unlocked mechanics. One thing this game does really well though is the pace at which it introduces new tricks for you to use. They'll start off slow, such as jumping to a different track and basic tricks, and over time you'll be introduced to new ones such as grinding, wall rides, carving in a tunnel, and things get more complex as even more mechanics get introduced, such as latching onto a monorail or tricking through wind tunnels. And they usually introduce these new mechanics around the start of each chapter, so it gives you ample time to get used to what you already have, so you don't get bombarded with everything all at once. I will say that the hardest one for me to grasp was around the end of the game, where you're now able to change gravity and ride on tracks on the ceiling, but it was also one of the last things they introduced into the game, so it kind of made sense that I didn't have enough time to get used to it. I will say the one trick I did enjoy the most has been the multi-track drifting, mostly because of the meme quality behind it, and it's just really funny to see a train drift on train tracks. You can really tell this game doesn't take itself too seriously at all. I mean, at the end of the level where you learn how to drift, they just throw up an image of the fucking car from Initial D. It's clear the developers wear their inspirations on their sleeve, and I love that. I started off this video by saying that I'm easily impressed, but there's a slight caveat to that. I'm easily impressed when it comes to games in the indie scene. I found myself in my own personal time looking towards more and more indie games rather than the more mainstream AAA titles. And it's not to put any of those games down. I know there have been some releases this year that have been really well received, but none of them have really interested me as much compared to some of the games that indie developers have been making. And Denshattack is a clear example of this to me. From the first time I saw the trailer for this game, I was already interested. It looked fun, it looked exciting, and it stood out. I mean, it's a fucking train wall riding. It's also not to say that if a more mainstream title were to be announced, I would not be interested in the slightest. I'd be interested in, say, a new From Software game, or whatever that Cyberpunk 2070 sequel is gonna be. But as of right now, the only 2 games that I'm really excited for are indie titles. To me, video games are a form of artistry, and when something becomes more and more corporate, that artistic soul starts to lose its shape. I want to see something new, something interesting, something different, something weird, and I've been finding more and more of those in the indie scene, where it feels like experimenting and creating passion projects thrive just a tiny bit more. In a way, Emmy, the main character of the game, kind of represents this ideal to me. You learn about something new, you want to try it out, you want to see what it's all about, and you want to punch corporations in the face for their shit decisions. Denshattack has been an amazing game from start to finish, and part of that comes down to knowing what it wants to be and understand what works for it and goes with it, paired with a standard art style and beautifully designed levels that becomes campier as it goes on. I've had such an amazing time with this game, and it's one that's easily recommended if these kind of games interest you. I've hardly found any faults with it, and it's one that I could easily see myself replaying over and over again. But you know, there is just one problem, and it's mostly due to how I play, and I blame Tony Hawk for that. The video game, not the person. I don't even think the guy really exists. Just a character made for a game, right? You see, I've been a fan of the Tony Hawk games ever since I first played Pro Skater 3, and from there I went on to Pro Skater 4, to Underground, which is my personal favorite, and from there on I only really fell off the series after Proving Grounds. See, the Tony Hawk games wasn't my first introduction to skating games. That was a game back on the PS1 called Street Skater. I wasn't very good at it. But I did get pretty good at Tony Hawk games and keeping combos going, and therein lies the problem, because every single time I land a trick with this train, I have to pull off a manual and struggle to land my combos. It almost feels wrong to not land into a manual and keep things going, like it makes me feel dirty and I have to scrub the filth off to get clean again, and you'll know you'll never be clean again. Never be clean again. Never be clean again. Never be clean again.
Never be clean again. Never be clean again. Never be clean again. Never be clean again. Never be clean again.
Anyway, good game, go play it.